Welcome back, my lords and ladies, to the Cast Beyond the Wall. We are your guide to all things Westerosi, and we're here to bring you a review, analysis, and fan v fan debate of each episode of HBO's hit show, Game of Thrones. I'm your host, Caleb Masters, and clearly I need to invest some stock in the Ace Hardwares up north because I'd be making a killing if I had done so before this week's episode. I am also, as always, joined by my co-host in the hot Dornish lands of Arizona. Sir, introduce yourself.
Name is Austin, and I was shocked by the conclusion to the White Walker versus Suicide Crows match in the Westerosi Football League this week.
I mean, I think the NFL wishes they had put some money on this horse. Like, they've invested in some money. Look at this whole other new sport they can have. It's called Fantasy League, where it's actually a fantasy league.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. So I'm also joined by my other co-host in the Starkish lands of Kentucky. Sir, introduce yourself.
I'm Daniel, and I cannot wait to see those monster babies that Tormund was talking about. I mean, those babies are going to be huge when that happens. So I can't wait for next season when we get to see that happen.
It'll be the biggest babies ever seen.
You won't believe it. Won't believe it. They'll be huge.
They'll be huge.
Huge. All right. And I do want to remind our listeners that in this episode, we'll be giving you our initial review, recapping each scene, and, of course, giving you an update on our fantasy teams. And I also want to remind you that you can track all of our posts on the Cast Beyond the Wall on our social media channels, including Twitter at cast_beyond_GOT, and on Facebook at facebook.com/Cast Beyond the Wall. And if you've been enjoying every episode, or maybe this is your first episode listening to the Cast Beyond the Wall, I hope you'll head on over to iTunes, Stitcher Radio, Google Play, or any of those podcast apps out there and give us a rating. And if you really like us, or maybe you really don't, give us a review. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say there, and that'll also help give us a bump on those particular channels. Now, we are joined this week by another returning guest host. Try to mix things up every year. We get some new blood, get some old blood, and we return by, I think this is fourth timer. I want to say fourth timer.
That sounds right. Yeah.
Fourth timer. Dalton Stewart from Good Trash Media. Welcome, sir.
Yes, it's me, Dalton Stewart, and guys, I'm here to tell you, walking is good, fighting is better, fucking's the best.
I'm not going to argue with that statement.
I wouldn't know anything about that, honestly.
Let's go ahead and just jump right into it, actually, by looking at the poll that we opened up last week, in which I asked the question, which super team name best describes the group of Game of Thrones characters at the end of last week's episode, Eastwatch? And, of course, I had the Westerosi X-Men on the table because of all that black leather that they're wearing that apparently was, I found out via the internet, was all made via...
IKEA.
Yeah.
They're made out of IKEA rugs.
Yeah, their costumes are actually made out of IKEA rugs dyed black.
The Night's Watch cloaks. They're real beat up IKEA rugs. It was what a treat.
Fantastic.
What a fun thing to know.
Thanks, internet. Thanks, costume designer. You're the best. So, is it the Westerosi X-Men, the Snow-Efficient Seven, the Expendable Sellswords, and the Suicide Crows? And the winner by a landslide was the Suicide Crows with 51%, and I believe we had around 28 participants this week, so all thanks to all 28 of you who participated. This is better than the Suicide Squad. Through the rest of this episode, anytime we refer to the 7 of our heroes that are together riding into White Walker territory, we're going to call them the Suicide Crows. So thanks again, and I want to remind you, if you can participate in all those polls on our social media channels that we just mentioned. But enough with that. Let's go ahead and dive right into this week's episode of Season 7, Episode 6 of Game of Thrones. The name we've all been waiting for, named after this very podcast. Very flattering, HBO. Beyond the Wall.
Death is the enemy. The first enemy and the last. The enemy always wins. And we still need to fight him.
You're scared, aren't you? What are you scared of?
We're going to start things off like we normally do, just kind of giving our initial overview and thoughts and feelings on the episode before we do the scene-by-scene breakdown. I think this is going to be a really fun conversation. Dalton, we'll start with you. Kick us off.
I mean, I feel like Beyond the Wall is kind of endemic of this whole season of Game of Thrones, which is to say that individual scenes are great. They're interesting. They're fun to watch. They're compelling. But the shortened season runtime makes things feel really condensed, and there's just not enough. And it's weird to me that Benioff and Weiss only wanted to do one more season, because it feels unconscionable that this could have possibly fit into 10 episodes, because there's so much plot that just kind of gets blown by. It's really weird. And again, like, I think that's kind of goes for this entire season as a whole, really, is character choices are interesting, but we don't get enough time to really understand why characters are making certain decisions. And that definitely hurts the show. Now, that said, I think the stakes are still, very much being presented by the show. The dramatic stakes are still there. I think interesting characters get to have interesting conversations with one another. I think interesting things are happening. I just don't always understand why characters are making certain choices. But, overall, it's quite an episode. I mean, we are getting a lot of spectacle this year. I mean, I would say there's more spectacle per episode in the history, in one single season than there ever has been in the history of the show.
Oh, yeah. No, this is packed tight with spectacle for sure.
That's where I'm at with it. I still enjoy it quite a bit. It definitely is not as strong as something like season, 3 or 4, but much like season 5 and 6, I've kind of accepted that. It's fine. I'm okay with it, especially like with the last 2 episodes of last season. I realized, that's what Game of Thrones is now. We're just gonna, okay, cool. And I'm fine with that. I can live with that. Sometimes it is hard to pay certain things off. I'm going to enjoy the ending more if I mitigate my expectations now. And that's fine.
All right. Thank you, Dalton. We'll go to you, Austin. What do you think?
We've kind of talked about it in weeks past. I echo Dalton's opinion on this almost exactly. In the context of this season, I think this is a pretty good episode. I think it's definitely one of the better ones this season. We got to see some really good conversations between characters. I found them to be extremely interesting conversations. But to Dalton's point, they lack context a little bit. They just kind of happened rather than they have any build up. And usually we'd have like breaks in between those conversations. This one was just like a bit like a party scene where it goes from like one group of people to another and they're all just kind of talking. But regardless, I enjoyed the conversations. I enjoyed the spectacle we saw. I enjoyed the high points of the plot, even if it was all felt pretty rushed.
All right, Austin. Daniel, what about you? What did you think of this week's episode?
I like this episode for the most part. There's a lot of highlights, as you guys already mentioned. A lot of the conversations, especially at the beginning, were very fun, and I enjoyed a lot of those conversations from characters that we haven't got to see interact before on the show. So that was really exciting. So the spectacle that you guys mentioned towards the end was also fun and to see, and we found a lot of information about the White Walkers and the Whites, and that maybe we didn't have before, and we learned some of the rules, you could say. As we kind of mentioned last week, some of the problems I think that we had with last week overflowed into this episode, and we'll talk more about that. But overall, yeah, I like this episode all right.
Okay, cool. Man, I'm going to be the dissenter here because I really didn't like this episode. The last half really rubbed me the wrong way initially, and I still don't like it. I will say, though, it rubbed me the wrong way so hard that I actually kind of overlooked the things I did like. So when I rewatched the episode, to make the show notes for tonight's podcast, I really did like probably about the first half because I really loved all the character interactions, and some of them were really great character interactions. You get some great stuff between Jon and Jorah that I thought was excellent. Dany and Tyrion scene in Dragonstone was top notch. So I like those things. The second half, it just is a continuation of the concerns I voiced last week. It's just a continuation of them really pushing our suspension of disbelief as an audience on what we're willing to accept as far as things teleporting everywhere. Sometimes the logic of like the rules of Westeros don't really hold any weight anymore. Just things kind of happen and you're just expected to kind of roll with it without really having any of the build up or the context. So I really, really do feel like, and to Dalton's point, and I think I said this last week, or at least hinted at it, but I really feel like Benioff and Weiss, they're truncating all this plot, because I think the two of them specifically are really, really ready to be done with the show. and they are just barreling forward as fast as they can, shoving in as much plot as they can per episode. Is it fun? Sure. Like, the spectacle's fun. Like, in the moment, I was really into the White Walker versus Dragon thing. That's really cool, and it's something we've been waiting years to see. So I think it's a cool spectacle, but it's just a couple of things. The Ice Dragon was kind of predictable, not necessarily in the context of this episode, but it's just something we all expected to have happen at some point. At least I did. I don't know. So when it happened, I was like, okay, well, there that is. It feels like it's become conventional. And that's the thing that bothers me. And the reason I love Game of Thrones is because it was breaking the conventions through the writing.
But don't you see, Caleb? It's gone meta at this point. It has conditioned you to expect everybody to die all the time. And now it has flipped the script once again. And now nobody dies.
Nobody dies, and that's not interesting or fun. Okay.
But it is. Well, it's meta, Caleb.
No.
They're now subverting your expectations by not doing the Game of Thrones thing.
Because it's easier to do and it's lazy.
Well, I don't know, man. I feel like Viserion's a pretty big fucking character death. I mean, the dude is in more episodes than he's not in. Yes, he is a CGI creation with no lines.
I wouldn't say he's in more episodes than he's not in, but he's probably in a good, 30 episodes. Sure.
He's in a lot of episodes.
Sure.
I understand the lack of major character death. I do. I mean, Thoros of Myr eating it was a given. You've got to clear that resurrection ability character off the deck. You got to get rid of that character. For season finales and series finales is to have stakes. The dragon eating it, I mean, yeah, I feel like if you had taken Tormund and a dragon from me, you're going to lose me as an audience member.
They should have taken Ordens. Okay, so they should have taken Tormund. Because that's the thing. As much as I don't actually want to lose Tormund, but
it makes sense.
It would fit, and that's the thing about Game of Thrones that we all like.
Well, that's how I knew the dragon was going to eat it, though. When Tormund didn't die, I was like, and the dragon showed up, I was like, oh, a dragon is dying. The show is managing to buck conventions in the way things are shot, right? So we've got
it's technically impressive.
Yeah, the Battle of Blackwater Rush, right? I mean, we're subverting the show is giving us what we want and making it hard to watch. You know, we get to see dragons toast Lannister men, and it's one of the most upsetting things you've ever seen, right? You finally see a battle with the White Walkers where the good guys have a plan. They're not just getting ambushed, and it still goes completely, bug fuck.
It's a pretty dumb plan, though.
No, it's really dumb. It's super dumb, but it definitely feels dumb because we weren't given a choice to see what other options were going to be. I think the show, on its own merit, still works very fine. I understand where you're coming from, Caleb, but I think if the show had more time to explain why it was making certain decisions, you would be much more happy.
I think that's my real problem.
Okay.
If these conventional things that were happening it had laid out and developed and it feels organic, that's fine. Whereas, I guess maybe it's still, I don't know, is it still, it's still organic but doesn't feel organic when it just happens at a moment's notice. It leads to the point where character motivations don't make a lot of sense. We'll get on the details as we recap the episode, but yeah, I'm trying really hard to like this show because I love it so much, but I have been it's one of those, I feel like I'm watching a Fast Five movie when it's over. Hey, guess what? Me and you talked about Fast Five before.
We have.
And we both love that movie.
Yeah.
And I love that movie, but that's not why I don't go to Game of Thrones for Fast Five. And that's kind of how it feels. Like I'm watching a big piece of spectacle, which is fun, but it's not why that's not why I started a podcast about this show. You know what I mean? So
that's fair.
We will continue that conversation as we do our recap here. Now, let's go ahead and start things off. Beyond the Wall, of course, hence the title. And John and his merry band of Suicide Crows are marching along. And we kind of called it last week at the end of the episode. You said, what's cool about what could be cool about this is all these characters interacting together because all these people have weird history, kind of like we saw last week at the very end of the episode. Hey, this is weird. I don't trust you. You don't trust me. We get to see some good interactions. So we got Tormund, calling out that this is kind of a dumb plan. And we got Gendry confronting the Brotherhood. I thought that was a really good beat. Gendry needed a good beat, so I'm glad we got that. And the reason he felt betrayed was because he was sold as a slave and a piece of property when he actually wanted to join them. So I guess he got to express that a little more clearly. Austin, what did you make of that bit?
There was a lot of conversations going on here, and I think the most impactful one was the one between Tormund and Jon, where he kind of starts to talk through Jon's decision to not bend the knee. And he talks a little bit about Mance Rayder. He's like, yeah, Mance didn't bend the knee and everybody suffered because of it. And he's dead now. So where did that get him ultimately? It just got a bunch of his men killed and himself killed. And I think that out of all the conversations, and they were all, frankly, extremely entertaining, that one probably has the most impact down the road.
Yeah, as Austin pointed out, there's definitely a lot of conversations going on here, and as he said, it was very entertaining. I loved pretty much all the conversations. We got to see a lot of characters interact that we don't typically get to see interact. One that sticks out to me is Jon and Jorah. I actually thought that was super cool how they brought up that sword and how that was supposed to go to Jorah, and yet Jon has it, and they kind of have that moment where Jon brings it up and it's like, this is supposed to be yours. I thought it was a really touching character moment, seeing as Jorah sort of owns, the decisions that he made, and they have that was just a really touching moment, I think, for me anyway. So that was really cool. A lot of these characters that are, as we mentioned last week, are all together. The one thing I guess I kind of have a problem with is that they were all against each other at the end of last week, and then now they're kind of like all happy, except for the whole Gendry and Brotherhood conversation. But overall, yeah, these conversations were very entertaining, and I definitely enjoyed that part of the show. Yeah.
Dalton, what do you think?
I'm a big fan of all of these conversations. Yeah, they're a ton of fun. It's fun to see these characters interact, and I think both of you have called out two very solid entries in this kind of vignette sequence we get, right? And it's a sequence that feels a lot like a Guys on a, like the Magnificent Seven, like really more than Magnificent Seven, it's more of a Searchers, right? It's just dudes walking for a long time and knowing that danger is imminent and trying to shoot the shit between that. And I really like that because it kind of calls back to that heritage of people on a mission movies, right? But the one that, for me, and I think, Caleb, what I really like about some of these later seasons is we're getting a lot of kind of declarative statements about what it's all meant. And they're not declarative statements that feel, stupid or pointless. Like, we're getting people saying, hey, this is what it's all meant this whole time.
Right.
And we get that sometimes. Chaos is a ladder. Sometimes the most moral thing you can do is break the wheel, right? Every once in a while, we'll get a character kind of very succinctly sum up the point of something.
There's a lot of callbacks, and then they kind of put a pin or
exactly. They put a pin in their own thought processes.
Right.
And one of my favorite in the history of the show really is Beric Dondarrion's with Jon.
You don't look much like him.
Who's that?
Your father. I suppose you favor your mother.
You knew him?
Of course I did. When he was hand, he sent me off hunting for the mountain. Your wildling friend told me the Red Woman brought you back. Thoros has brought me back 6 times. We both serve the same lord.
I serve the North.
The North didn't raise you from the dead.
The Lord of Light never spoke to me. I don't know anything about him. I don't know what he wants from me.
He wants you alive.
Why?
I don't know.
That's all anyone can tell me. I don't know. So what's the point in serving a god if none of us knows what he wants?
I think about that all the time. I don't think it's our purpose to understand. Except one thing. We're soldiers. We have to know what we're fighting for. I'm not fighting so some man or woman I barely know can sit on a throne made of swords.
So what are you fighting for?
Life. Death is the enemy. The first enemy, and the last.
But we all die.
The enemy always wins. And we still need to fight him. That's all I know. You and I won't find much joy while we're here. But we can keep others alive. We can defend those who can't defend themselves.
I am the shield that guards the realms of men.
Maybe we don't need to understand any more than that. Maybe that's enough.
Aye. Maybe that's enough.
Yeah, man, we're gonna lose. No matter what you do, you will lose. We all will die. And it's this really great kind of call out to the Sisyphean nature of just being a person.
Right.
You're gonna die no matter what. Hey guys,
death is the real enemy, you know.
Yeah, John is kind of interrogating Dondarrion on that. Like, what is the fucking point? You've died 6 times. Like, why? Why do you keep coming back, man? And I think Dondarrion does a really good job being like, buddy, that's the point. Like, we're gonna lose no matter what. But you and me are fighters, like, and we're good at it. And this is a fight that needs. This is a physical confrontation that needs people of the utmost skill. We have a purpose here. We're too important to get got because you fight swords real good, and I can make fire happen on a sword. They need us. And I really love that moment because I think it does a good job of explain why do we keep going when Robb Stark dies, when Ned Stark dies, when Catelyn Stark, when your parents and the people you look up to eat it, what's the point of going on? Yeah, so you can try to make the world a little bit better just like they did, but at the end of the day, it will be ultimately pointless, but that's kind of the point.
Right. Well, and see, that is one of the things that you get from the things I've liked about the early seasons of Game of Thrones, and to your point, it does pay off a little bit here. That's been the best part of the season is the payoff
for sure.
A lot of these long-standing relationships and connections, like we get Jorah and Jon meeting, and they talk about the sword that was planted back in season 1.
Yeah.
Or you get Sam and Jorah, like these. Oh my God, I knew your dad, and like when they have that moment, it means infinitely more.
Yeah, it's so beautiful.
If we just saw that scene on its own, you know, it's or later in the episode. I don't want to jump ahead, but just later in the episode, when Sansa says, tells Arya, you don't know what I've been through.
Yeah.
She really doesn't know what she's been through.
To jump forward even further, that's why I think scenes like the scene between Dany and Jon don't work. Because we don't have any context for what these characters actually think about each other.
Right.
So, and those are nitpicks. Those are problems that I understand a little bit more.
Right. And those are more of the cardinal sins, I would say. But we'll get to that scene a little bit.
Yeah.
But no, I think you bring it up that whenever they get kind of into this philosophical underpinning that's been writing throughout the entire show and the book series as well, that is what has always attracted me.
Those are moments
to
that
the
feel
show.
special.
Yeah, they feel special, and it feels like it sets it apart from other stories, especially fantasy. But no, that's a great scene. I also really enjoy. I mean, this one's fun. There's not much more to it than I just enjoyed the Hound and Tormund shooting the shit. I hate judges.
They're just shit talking each other so hard. It's really good.
It's the 2 biggest comedy relief in the entire show together. It's fantastic. Love it.
I think they cheated me out of some fantasy points. I should have gotten a multiplier for that scene when they were one-lining each other. I mean,
also that's also where you get Tormund talking about how he has a beauty waiting back for him at Winterfell, and then the Hound's like, "You're with her," that was awesome too.
It is
such a joy.
It is. It's one of the funniest things.
And that's I don't understand how you could be so mad at this season because what a joy!
Yeah, no, that scene's great. That scene is awesome. I love all of these. All these different.
These vignettes.
These are good. This was the strongest part of the episode. This, and then we get one with. Let's go ahead and move on to. Firstly, do you guys have anything else you'd like to add about any of those specific openings? Okay. That'll take us to another scene that I really like, which is the first scene. Now, I'll articulate the one I liked versus the one I didn't like. The one I like, Arya and Sansa out on the balcony in Winterfell. I really dug this one. Arya is reflecting on her relationship with Ned, which clearly she always felt like she was more like Ned than her siblings, certainly more than her mother, and she knew, kind of thinking through how she always knew she was never going to be a princess or a queen or whatever, which is really cool. Again, this is kind of her really reflecting on her entire arc throughout the show. Now, what is interesting, though, even though she has that moment, we also learn in the scene, as she's talking to Sansa, that she really hasn't changed that much, because she takes that letter and pins it all on Sansa and says, "You always had the nice things. You always had it easy. I saw you. You were in bed with the enemy." A lot of people on the internet are throwing a lot of hate at this particular subplot. I don't like the second part. I do like this part, though, because for me, what it shows is that even though Arya has become a distinct killer, and she is she's very, very smart. She knows how to do things. There's no question about that. But her maturity level hasn't quite caught up, and she's still projecting the same notions on her sister she's always had.
She's emotionally still a child.
I don't like this either. And it's one of those things that I don't want to go too hard on not liking, because this is one of those stories that would pay off a lot better if it had several more episodes to develop.
Agreed.
By a lot. But I don't want to make too strong an opinion on this because I want to see where it's going first. This is kind of one of those storylines where the week-to-week nature of the show makes it kind of hard to talk about. it is kind of hard for me to have an opinion on this storyline right now.
Right.
Because I don't know. I still can't tell what it's setting up. Obviously, it's setting up a conflict between Sansa, Arya, and Littlefinger.
Right.
There's a three-headed conflict. When we find out who ends up on whose side, I will be much more interested. I'm actually more interested in some aspects of the second scene, so I don't really have a whole lot to say here. The reasons they're mad at each other make sense, I guess is the best way to put it. And I like that the seeds that were planted the first time we see Arya start doing murders back with the Hound, the seeds that were being planted is that Arya has been irreparably damaged by all the violence she's seen.
Right.
I like that those chickens are coming home to roost, plot-wise. I'm a fan of that overall. But at the same time, I am also very annoyed with the story overall just because it feels very quick.
Yeah, yeah.
Arya gets over being happy to see Sansa very quickly. Sansa starts to be distrustful of Arya very quickly, and it's another one of those symptoms of this thing we've been talking about, is this plot acceleration that's just kind of frustrating sometimes.
I think it to me, the whole scene, like, one, I'm very, very frustrated with Arya, and I have been for years, so that's not going to change, but the scene, I think, actually works pretty well, because it does illustrate that Sansa is able to grow through all her experiences, and while Arya gained a lot of additional skills, and she's definitely more deadly, she didn't grow or really learn anything from everything she's witnessed or kind of experienced. And when we get that scene in a couple episodes ago with Nymeria, where Nymeria comes up and sees Arya, and, you know, we get that kind of tension of, like, is Arya still the same person? Is she not? When I see this scene with Sansa, to me, she's exactly the same child that she's always been. This kind of, like, spiteful little kid that still can't get over Sansa, blaming her dog for attacking Joffrey, and like, she just never let go of any of that. She's still the same person. And on a side note, did any of you guys think that the whole story that she talked about with the arrow and Ned was, like, totally a lie? Like, she was making it up just like she was with the Faceless Men?
I mean,
that had not occurred to me.
Hadn't occurred to me
man,
either.
I like that a lot.
Yeah. Interesting. Still, you like Arya? You liked Arya once upon a time. What do you think?
Yeah, it's hard to like her anymore. She was for a very long time my favorite character, but it's really hard to continue to like her. I did enjoy this moment. One thing that I liked it, just as from an audience standpoint, a lot of times when we talk about, especially on this podcast, we talk about Ned, we remember how kind of stupid he was when he made all these decisions that got himself killed. And it was really nice to kind of remember, you know, Ned was a little non-traditional in the sense of the way that he handled Arya. Most people would not have, allowed her to be able to do this training and with an arrow, or, set up a sword training with Syrio, things like that. And those were some things about Ned that were not traditional, when a lot of times we think about him being, this traditional fantasy character who is super honorable, and that's all that matters. So that was kind of a nice moment just as an audience member for me. But yeah, I agree. There's for me, other than that, it was sort of meh. It's just setting up for what's going to happen later. There's this tension starting to grow between them. For me, though, it's a lot. Dalton was mentioning how it was moving fast. I kind of have the opposite feeling. I feel that they never really liked each other at all, so it makes sense that they immediately go back to, like, not liking each other. For me, that first scene that we talked about a couple episodes ago, it felt forced from Arya's side, that she was pretending to be happy. So I never really felt like she was excited to be back. So for me, it's a little bit easier to believe for me.
They picked up exactly where they left off. They hated each other when they separated last, and they still hate each other.
So for me, it was a little bit more believable that it's moved at the quicker pace. But yeah, overall, it was a fine scene.
Those are strong arguments. I might be rethinking this. And again, the part of it that I have the hardest time having an opinion about is it's one of those storylines that, and maybe you're right, Daniel, maybe it is moving too slow, because maybe the thing that I find frustrating about it is I have no idea where it's going.
Right.
And it's not that I need to know where everything's going, but when there's conflict between two characters I like, it's frustrating to not have any idea why there's this conflict.
I agree with you about the lack of context, but if we'd have 2 or 3 more scenes exactly like this, kind of going down this path, I think it would like that. But again, we don't really know because we haven't seen the payoff yet.
Exactly.
Yeah, you know.
And that's,
so
I'm kind of two minds.
I do like it. It's really interesting though. I will say a lot of the writers I've been following online, Game of Thrones writers, really think this is like a character assassination of Arya, and I'm like, I don't know. This seems pretty. She seems like a girl she's a petty teenager who has all the skills of like the universe's deadliest assassin.
Yeah. This completely fits everything they've set up for the past 6 seasons. I think it totally fits her.
Good arguments, guys. Good arguments. So let's go ahead and we'll be back at What's Your Phone moment. But as I said last week, it's not as easy to just go to one location to the next like it used to be. Now we got to like fling around for it all to flow pretty well. So we're going to jump to Dragonstone for a minute. And Tyrion and Dany, this is a great scene. I loved this scene, actually. Tyrion and Dany. Daenerys says, I am so grateful for you, Tyrion. You're so great because you're not a hero. Heroes are stupid and they do stupid things and they always go out and try to outdo each other, see who can do the stupidest thing. And I know that sounds kind of like a whiny girl thing to say, but I thought it was kind of fun because it gave Tyrion a platform to stand on to say, hey, wait. Here's why they're doing this. It's because they all love you. It's because they adore you. They're not all being El Macho just to one-up each other. It's because they want to see you succeed. And they kind of love you. I mean, Jorah, Dario, yeah, they kind of love you. Oh, and guess what, John? I think he might like you.
I like what you're saying, though, Caleb. I like the point you're making that it does seem like the show might be trying to pigeonhole Daenerys as this shrewish character who's like, oh, and can be a frustrating. It's an important character in fiction, especially in shows like Breaking Bad and Mad Men, where characters like that were much maligned. Female characters who were maligning our anti-heroes. Oh, just let him have fun. Well, no, he's a piece of shit. Like, no, somebody needs to be telling him they're wrong. And I think you're right, Caleb. I think it could be easy to misread this scene that way.
Right.
As Daenerys is a boring character who doesn't want to let cool guys do cool guy shit.
Yeah,
no, that's totally a misrepresentation. And I think you're right. I think you're right in that the show is kind of subverting that by saying, no, it is dumb to like go off half-cocked. And then Tyrion does make the point,
right? Yeah,
they are dum-dums, but they're doing it because they care about you and they are invested in.
And it gives him a great segue to talk about, how are they going to go about anticipating their enemies.
But if we go to the capital, we'll go with 2 armies, we'll go with 3 dragons. Anyone touches you, King's Landing burns down to the foundation stones.
And right now she's thinking of how to set a trap.
Of course she is. And she's wondering what trap you're laying for her.
Are we? Laying any traps?
If we want to create a new and better world, I'm not sure deceit and mass murder is the best way to start.
Which war was won without deceit and mass murder?
Yes, you'll need to be ruthless if you're going to win the throne. You need to inspire a degree of fear, but fear is all Cersei has. It's all my father had, and Joffrey. It makes their power brittle, because everyone beneath them longs to see them dead.
Aegon Targaryen got quite a long way on fear.
He did. But you once spoke to me of breaking the wheel. Aegon built a wheel. If that's the kind of queen you want to be, how are you different from all the other tyrants that came before you?
So we walk into the lion's den.
My brother promised me he'd keep a grip on the Lannister forces.
Forgive me, but I don't care about any Lannister promises. Except yours.
And I promised him I'd keep you from doing anything impulsive.
Impulsive.
This will be a difficult negotiation. We're sitting down with people who want to see us both headless. My sister's likely to say something provocative. And you have been known to lose your temper from time to time, as all great leaders do.
When have I lost my temper?
Burning the Tarleys, for instance.
That was not impulsive. That was necessary.
Perhaps.
Perhaps.
Perhaps the father needed to die and not the son. Perhaps they both needed time to contemplate their mistakes in the solitude of a cold cell. We had no time to discuss the possibilities before you ended their possibilities.
One could be forgiven for thinking you're taking your family's side in this debate.
I am taking their side. You need to take your enemy's side if you're going to see things the way they do. And you need to see things the way they do if you're going to anticipate their actions, respond effectively, and beat them. Which I want you to do very much, because I believe in you and in the world you want to build. But the world you want to build doesn't get built all at once. Probably not in a single lifetime. How do we ensure your vision endures? After you break the wheel, how do we make sure it stays broken?
Which eventually rounds out with a conversation about the secession, which I like that. Again, it felt a little rushed that we got straight to that point off right out of this conversation. I know why they got to set that up, the line of secession, who's going to take over if Danny's around. They've got to set that up for whatever reason. But on this conversation, it did feel a little weird to transition straight into. He's like, I'm looking at the big picture, and she's like, oh, so you're looking at who's going to secede me? No, Tyrion's just saying, think about the big picture. I don't know. It was really, really great stuff, though. Dalton, what did you make of the scene?
Again, to my point earlier, I like that back and forth they have about heroism as an act of stupidity. I think that's really fun. As far as the line of secession thing goes, I actually like it. I like it quite a bit. I like that it does remind you that Daenerys doesn't always like hearing what Tyrion has to say. Even if she does end up agreeing with him, she is frustrated by it. And what the larger point that Tyrion is trying to make is, buddy, I'm trying to help you break the wheel. Let's go ahead and do a democracy. He flat out points out the way that the Night's Watch and the way that the Greyjoys. I like that Tyrion's like, hey, we could just stop doing this monarch thing if you wanted to. I think that's the point he's trying to get at, and all she's hearing is, hey, dum-dum, you're going to die someday. And, when you're in your late 20s, that's not a fun thing to hear.
Right. One, she's very driven by the one goal. Like, her whole life is leading up to this. I've got to get this throne so I can rule. So
she hasn't really thought about what comes next.
Right.
And he's trying to remind her of that, and yeah, she's losing right now. You don't want to have that conversation while you're getting your ass kicked.
Right.
So I think it is a fun conversation. I agree with you that it makes characters seem unreasonable when we do kind of speed up these conversations into, maybe an episode's worth of plot gets moved through in a scene. That can be frustrating, but overall, I like the scene.
On the line of succession, I think it goes back to what we've really predicted for years, and we're not unique in this, is that the Iron Throne likely will not exist by the end of this series. But they would very much like to, and the show's beginning to lay down those breadcrumbs to follow, which is what we want the show to be doing. So I'm glad they are starting to lay these breadcrumbs down rather than it just happening at some point, which is what we've criticized it for in some of these episodes this season. So I'm glad they're building up to it. Yeah. So it feels a little unnatural in this scene, but I'd rather them do it and it feel a little rushed in this scene than not do it and we just have something weird happen out of nowhere.
And then a rainbow emerges from the Iron Throne, correct? The giant rainbow launches out of the Iron Throne and they all hold hands together and sing Kumbaya.
And everybody's happy. Sing Kumbaya, yeah. And on the earlier scene with Dany and Tyrion, this is a kind of a conversation that's come up in very different ways throughout the season, I think, so far, in which Dany is kind of wrestling between how she wants to rule and how she gains the respect of her followers and the people of Westeros. Does she rule via fear, or does she rule by inspiring people? We had early conversations that she wanted to inspire everybody, and then she has a conversation with Elena Tyrell, and Elena says, no, you got to go in guns blazing and scare the shit out of everybody, and then she roasts the Tarleys. Now we're back to Tyrion saying, yeah, but these people are doing those things because you have inspired them to do it. So it's really, I think, a theme throughout this entire season where we're really seeing this internal conflict of what type of ruler is Dany going to be.
Right. Is she going to fight with the methods that she knows works because they've worked for her predecessors, or is she actually going to break the wheel and inspire change, which is obviously it's going to be the harder thing to do,
exactly.
But Tyrion's challenging her.
Caleb, you've said this a lot on the podcast before, and I think you're right. Some of the best moments I can think of in Game of Thrones are just people sitting down and talking for quite a long time. And this is one of those scenes, and I agree with you. This is one of my favorite scenes of this episode, and I really enjoyed it.
Let's go ahead and move back beyond the wall to the next section of our march north. And holy shit, guys, it's a zombie polar bear. Oh my god.
Oh my god. What joys this episode.
It's true. We did get zombie polar bears. We found out what happened to the polar bears on Lost after the fact. I mean, they got zombified.
What joys.
The zombie bear shows up. All those red shirts get torn in half. I was waiting for Scotty to show up and say something about it. Didn't happen. This is when Thoros of Myr goes down. He got mauled by a zombie polar bear. That's pretty badass. And he survived. And we also get to see Thoros of Myr wield pull out his flaming sword and give Caleb insta fantasy points like left and right. That was pretty great. And then it ended up being Jorah taking the Zom polar bear down. And then I was like, oh man, he's gonna die right here. But no. Beric Dondarrion's a smart, resourceful man. He's like, no, we're gonna cauterize that wound.
Oh, so cool.
Oh man,
so cool.
It was so cool.
Why is the one guy who can resurrect people leading the charge against this thing? This seems really stupid. Don't you ever send in your cleric first?
Yeah,
That's
never
dumb.
put the cleric in the front line.
I feel like, well, and I think what you guys just mentioned, I was about to retort, and I realized that's kind of the problem with this scene. It is not as well shot as some of the action scenes later in the episode.
Yeah.
It's a little, like, there's a lot of snow, there's a lot of handheld camera going on, there's a lot of there's a lot of quick edits.
Yeah.
It makes it kind of hard to track. Wait, was that a red shirt or was that somebody important? Wait, did Thoros run at the bear or did the bear run at Thoros?
Yes.
Like, it makes it hard to kind of follow this action scene, which is a thrilling scene.
Right.
And I get that that's the point.
It's just hard to track.
They're trying to make you feel as disoriented as everybody else is. They tried this in Battle of the Bastards as well when Jon gets trampled. It didn't really work that well there either. Like, I see what they're going for. The execution kind of falls short, though.
Their quick takes are not as good as their long takes. I'll put it that way. Their long takes, in my opinion, work much better.
They're trying to make you feel disoriented,
right?
And instead, they just make you frustrated because you can't tell what's going on,
right? Also, one other thing, there's just, and I'll mention it again later. One way to help with that, for me at least, would have been a few establishing shots. It was never established how many red shirts were with them, at least that I can recall.
Not me either.
I mean, there's like big line of them, but it felt like I counted them, and I was like, well, we've lost way more red shirts than there were. And
it's all the people who were wearing hoods. You couldn't see their face. They were nobody important, and you knew they were going to die. And without fail, they all did.
Oh, so you bullseye, man, because I noticed the same thing at the very end. When the last red shirt ate it, I was like, oh, the red shirts had hoods on.
Yeah.
Duh.
One thing that I do want to mention that's actually semi-important to our characters here, and I was glad they threw it out there. So Jorah and Thoros knew each other. Now, they didn't make it explicitly clear how they knew each other, but they implied if you kind of know the history of Westeros, you pick up it pretty quick, which is they fought together to put down the Greyjoy rebellion.
Yeah, they fought against Balon. And whooped him up.
Yep.
They're the enemy.
Your people thought he was a god, is what I heard.
That's what Jorah said. You can't trust a Mormont.
I trust a Mormont over a pirate any day.
Yeah, baby, I trust a Mormont before I trust a Greyjoy. Are you out of your fucking mind?
Yeah. After the scene, though, they discover the White Walker group on patrol, because I bet you didn't know White Walkers actually go on patrol. They bait them by lighting a fire, and then the White Walker patrol does their job and goes and inspects, and they get ambushed. This was a better fight scene, I thought, than the bear scene.
Oh, this fight scene's real good.
Yeah, it was super cool, right?
Real good.
Legit tension. That's the thing. I knew at least one or two of our heroes was going to bite no matter what. So I was like, all right, when's that gonna happen? So there was a little bit of tension there. And then once Jon kills the White Walker, cuts him in half with his Valyrian steel sword, most of them drop to the ground. Not all of them. They were able to save the one, I guess.
So my assumption is that it's not a distance thing. It's like a Vampire Masters thing. It's
right.
who done sired that white.
Right. That's kind of they say it in one line. So it's
that's right.
If you quick and you miss, but it's very easy to miss. Though.
No, I remember it now. Though you're right.
No, you're. But I think it's important that we make the distinction on this podcast because I don't think everyone caught that.
Yeah, that was not conjecture on my part. I forgot there was in fact a line.
There is a line, but it's easy to miss though. So basically, it seems like the rules are like you said. Whatever White Walker
old school
turned them,
Vampire Master rules.
Yeah, so clearly the other White Walker that turned them is the Night King or off somewhere else. So they're able to kidnap this one rogue White, and it's kind of hilarious seeing the Hound beat the shit out of a dead
really
body.
Funny.
Actually,
it's really good.
He's trying to knock him unconscious the whole time. I mean, it was pretty good. This is when Jon turns around and he's seen this before. He goes back. He has like a PTSD flashback to Hardhome, where he sees the big kind of avalanche-looking mist coming off the mountains, and he's like, "Oh shit, we got to get out of here." And they're like, "Gendry, head for the hills. Get a raven off. Get a raven off." And he just and in fact, not only take running. The Hound or someone's like, no, you don't need a hammer. The hammer will slow you down. Let me take it from you, so you can run across the terrain without a weapon.
Best athlete in Westeros, no doubt.
I thought for sure he was going to die when they took that weapon. I was like, oh my gosh, they're going to take away his weapon. He's going to run back. He's going to freaking die. He's not going to make it.
You know, you guys are right. Game of Thrones subverted my expectations. The character without the weapon survived.
This is one of those moments where I think, oh, the first half of this storyline should have been the end of Eastwatch. They really should have put them walking at the end of Eastwatch.
Yes.
I get why they didn't.
That's a really good point.
Pacing-wise,
I really agree with that.
Yeah, pacing-wise, it's way cooler to have an episode end with these badasses like walking out of the tunnel and like into this unknowable abyss. And yeah, I get the decision from a purely like cool moment line of thinking. In terms of just getting a sense of how long things take, 2 episodes makes more sense. But I get the impression they haven't been walking for more than half a day. So Gendry probably ran like 7 miles tops.
I mean, that's where it gets tricky. It could. I guess we have to assume it wasn't that long.
I assume it's been like half a day.
But it was half the episode, though, whereas time speeds up significantly.
And it's been a long time. I mean, it's been going for a long time that the episodes do not work in a purely linear fashion.
Sure. And nor should they. It wouldn't be as fun that way.
But to your point, if there was an episode break in between the two, that would have been a much better way to explain what happened there as far as time goes.
One way they could have, in my opinion, all is basic editing and getting a couple more establishing shots.
I think that's a big part of it, yeah.
Let's get an establishing shot of them standing on the ice at night and and if it's just like a 30-second scene of them like chilling out or something, that way we know, they've been there longer than a day. Like we don't...
Yeah. Well, we got Gendry arriving at night.
And that's my reason for thinking it is a single day because we don't ever see them make camp. But it's hard to get a sense of how long things are taking. And again, I think ending Eastwatch on the cliffhanger of there's an army headed directly for us, Gendry, get out of here. Then it makes more sense the next episode when Gendry arrives at night. You're like, okay, it's been like a day-ish.
Right. Well, and even in this and I agree, the episode break would have been better. But I think even in this episode, like we see Gendry arrives at night, but then we see, I guess we're led to believe, to understand that our guys have been there in the day. We cut to Gendry at night, and then we come back to our guys in the daytime that a night had passed. It would have been good to have seen the guys on the ice, because from a viewer perspective...
I thought you meant you would have liked to see them camping earlier. Yes. I get what you're saying now. You would have liked to see them camping that night.
That night. It's because they go to sleep in the daytime, and they wake up in the daytime, and that's a little thing that I think, at least just for me personally, would have helped. Been like, it's been a while.
Fair.
Other than, hey, look, that ice broke and it's refroze. So I guess it's been... We don't know how that works in the north, though. Is that like an hour? Is that a day?
I can feel it radiating off of you. I know what you want to talk about. We're going to talk about it later, because I did research on peregrine falcons, baby.
Holy shit.
I'm ready to talk about flight speeds all day.
Flight speeds.
But have you looked at water freezing speeds?
No, and that I'm less concerned with. I don't give a shit about that.
On that note, this is a great time for a break on our show when Austin gives us the update on our fantasy league after this week. And Austin, I am so excited to hear what you have to say this week.
Thank you, Caleb. As you know, we are doing an 8-person Game of Thrones fantasy league in which we draft characters and we are scored on various categories. There are 5 categories in total. The first being violence.
Any man dies with a clean sword, I'll rape his fucking corpse!
Sex and nudity.
The gods made this, and it delights me.
Wits and schemes.
Chaos isn't a pit. Chaos is a ladder.
Status and power.
Power is power.
And finally, drinking and eating.
I understand that if any more words come pouring out your cunt mouth, I'm gonna have to eat every fucking chicken in this room.
Within these categories, you get points for things like sacking a city, getting a promotion, using magic, or getting fully naked. This week was a point bonanza. There were so many points. It was insane. I managed to capture the number 1 spot, once again, my rightful place, with a total of 265 points this week for a grand total of 670 points. Night King did some work for me this week finally and got a lot of points. In the number 2 spot, a huge surprise to me, honestly.
Out of nowhere.
It is out of nowhere from like 6th place. is the Dum Dum Star Killers. Mr. Caleb Masters' team scored 490 points this week for a grand total of 650.
Guys, I was holding out.
Who is on his team?
It's insane.
There's shenanigans here, okay? And we'll go into this here in a minute.
I was rewarded even further by one little deal, one detail me and Austin didn't consider. What was that one, Austin?
Look, we'll get to that. Point here is you cheated. So we'll get there. Number three spot, a team has no name, scored 100 points, Mr. Daniel Stahl's team, for a total of 560 points. So, gentlemen, we are at 1, 2, and 3, and I am dubbing this the War of the Three Kings going into the final episode. One episode left. We might get passed by one of the listeners in the league as well. Totally possible. But we are all in a commanding lead at the top of the league. Now, our MVP this week is Mr. Beric Dondarrion with 250 points. The man lit his sword on fire 4 times, and each time he did that was considered a magical event. He scored 50 points each time. Now, listeners, do you believe that this parlor trick that Beric Dondarrion does of lighting his sword on fire is equivalent to the Night King resurrecting a fucking dragon? Because I do not. I feel like those are very unequal things.
So, Austin, I don't know. I mean, so Beric Dondarrion was the sleeper hit. I think he was my third pick. Like, I picked him pretty early in the draft.
That's pretty fair then. I picked Euron as my third, and so that's pretty good.
Oh yeah, and the Hound also threw some great one-liner points for me too. Yeah,
that he did. And for the record, the Night King scored 150 for the dragon kill, which is big time points.
So. Oh, he gets scored 3 magic events. That checks out.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
That's a pretty big. It's a pretty big win.
Okay.
I think the only thing bigger than that would be like taking the Iron Throne because it's bigger than sacking a city. So not bad. Night King. If you want to keep up with all of our Fantasy League stuff, you can of course head on over to Good Trash Media, the webpage where you can find all of our posts. GoodTrashMedia.com. You can keep listening to our podcast by subscribing on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, any of those podcast apps that you like to use to listen to your podcasts. Or you can follow us on Twitter at cast_beyond_GOT, or on Facebook at facebook.com/Cast Beyond the Wall. Make sure to tune in next week when we get the ultimate showdown. Who's going to win? Me, Austin, or Daniel? This is a big deal. Monumental. It's going to be huge.
You don't fight with honor.
No, he did.
Before we get back to today's recap, I am excited to make a special announcement. The Cast Beyond the Wall has been invited by the Bald Move podcast, hosted by Jim Jones, to join a special Game of Thrones podcast fundraiser for the ACLU, that is the American Liberty Civil Union, with 11 other podcasts. Starting next week, an Indiegogo campaign will be launched along with an exclusive Cast Beyond the Wall podcast special. We'll have more details on the topic, including where you can go to donate your money to access this exclusive episode on next week's show. We appreciate all the support you've given the Cast Beyond the Wall, and we hope you continue to share your love by contributing to this really exciting fundraising opportunity. So we left off. Gendry makes it back to the wall. They send that Raven. And that Raven hits 88 miles per hour and jumps through time and space and arrives at Dragonstone. And to deliver the message that the Night King... Oh, we got some math. Someone's crunching math numbers. Oh, okay. So, arrives at Dragonstone to tell her that, hey, look, there's a trap. It's a trap. They were telling us it's a trap. Hey, look, the Night King's ambushing us. We're screwed. So she dons her a giant Emma Frost coat. She takes that white, throws it on. She's going to go fight Jon North. Again, a pretty rash decision, but Daenerys has done those before. And Tyrion's like, hey, no, this is a bad idea. This is a really terrible idea, actually. You should definitely not do it. Doing nothing's smarter, and that's the hard thing to do as a leader. Inspirational talk. And then and here's the thing. Here's what threw me off. She didn't just take a dragon up north. She took all 3 of them. I didn't think she was going to take all 3. Like, once I realized that she was actually going north, I was like, oh, shit. And she takes all 3. So all of her weapons. right there. Her F-20 Raptors or whatever, they're all right there, and they go north. Pretty crazy time. Pretty crazy flight time for the Raven, at least. I can leeway on the dragons, who we can assume they're jets. They can fly around very fast. That I'll buy that. So what about the Raven, though?
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm glad you asked, because I do know through some research that carrier pigeons are known to fly about 58 miles an hour.
Okay.
Ish. Dragonstone to the wall is what, probably 400 miles?
Oh no, it's like
there's like 800.
No, it's like 2,000.
It can't be that.
It's a size of
3,000 from the wall to Dorne, right?
Westeros is the size of South America.
Ish, yeah, and the math is that it's like 3,000 miles from north of the wall to Dorne.
Okay, so let's say it's 1,000.
Let's say it's 1,000. It's not undoable. One time, a dove flew like 880 miles in a day.
Okay,
so it's not and that was like a carrier dove. It's not inconceivable.
Right. Okay. It's not inconceivable.
It is not inconceivable.
I will take that.
And that's really all there is to talk about in this scene.
It's not. Again, this is not the thing. I mean, I think it's really dumb, but it's not worth. It's not. I want to reiterate, it's not worth nitpicking about.
No. Do you actually have issues with this scene? Because it feels like you do.
I feel like
Caleb's got issues with everything right now. The man has issues.
Because I feel like the three of us don't really give a shit about this scene, but Caleb seems to have an opinion.
No. Well, I feel like as an audience member, I'm being abused.
Okay.
My intelligence is being assaulted, and I'm just expected to roll with it. But whatever, we'll keep going because the plot needs to get where it's gonna go. So we gotta move on and not worry about it.
You kind of gotta grit your teeth. Yeah,
you just gotta bite it and say.
Honestly, I don't need this scene at all whatsoever. I wish we didn't get this scene and then we get back up later.
That would have been more surprising, at least.
It would have been more surprising. We would have cut time.
But been like, oh shit, she brought her dragons. Like, yeah. We did. Okay, yeah, okay. I could have done with that.
I think we cut the scene entirely. It actually moves at a much better clip pacing wise.
Yeah. Okay, now while she's flying north to the wall, let's stop at Winterfell on the way, where Sansa meets with Baelish, admits that she's not sure she can trust Arya, and fears that Arya is going to use that information in the letter to turn her army against her, which is actually a pretty valid fear, I would argue. I mean, Northerners are not the brightest people, and they're not really ones to know how to interpret nuance and complicated things like, oh wait, you wrote a letter, you said this, that means you were telling the truth, and it just would complicate things no matter what. So, reasonable fear. And then this is when Sansa says, I don't know if I trust Arya anymore. She might be dangerous. I don't really know. And that's when Baelish is like, yeah, but didn't Brienne, she is here to protect you. Because didn't she swear an oath to both the Stark girls? Now, this leads us into the scene where Sansa then receives a letter allegedly from King's... I mean, I think it's from King's Landing. There's some disagreement among the cast here. From Cersei to that calling for this meeting or whatever.
A King's Moot.
King's Moot. There we go.
King's Moot.
We'll simplify it. Yeah,
Queen's Moot.
Ooh, Queen's Moot.
I like it.
There are more queens than kings, so...
Yeah, it's the War of the Three Queens.
Yeah, War of the Three Queens. I mean, Sansa might as well be, yeah. So... she sends Brienne away, and Brienne insists on staying, but nonetheless, Sansa says, no, go away. I don't need you. I'm safe.
Yeah, I mean, I was confused up until right before this podcast, and frankly, it still kind of is a little dumb. To me, when Littlefinger says to Sansa, hey, Brienne's here to protect both of you from hurting each other. If I'm Sansa, I'm like, hey, that's cool. Because I don't really trust Arya right now, and I would like to be protected from that. But we see in a later scene that Sansa is like, oh, actually, I'm going to send Brienne away because I just want to kill people. And that right there seems like really outside of Sansa's character right now. That's the part, like, did not like the scene, didn't make sense to me. Did you guys take something else from it?
Baelish wants there to be division between Arya and Sansa.
Yes.
And he sees Brienne as a threat to himself and to whatever his plan is. So he wants to get rid of her.
Okay, so...
That's the goal. I don't really know... I don't know what...
Well, yeah, I understand Littlefinger's motivation. I don't understand Sansa's. That's the part I don't get.
Okay, so put your tinfoil hat on, because I took this a little bit differently. As soon as I saw that Sansa had a letter from Cersei, I immediately thought it was fake. And I could be way off here, but I totally thought that this was a play by Littlefinger to get Brienne away so that he could make an attempt on Arya's life. He is already planting the seeds into Sansa's mind that she's not to be trusted. He has this conversation about, oh, well, so Brienne would have to stop someone if they tried to make an attempt on Arya or your life. And then literally in the next scene, we see her get this letter and she decides to send Brienne away. I felt like that was a play by Littlefinger trying to get Brienne out of there so that he can maneuver around. So I understand your confusion, Austin, if it's not fake. But for me, if it is fake, maybe that's Littlefinger's way in. I don't know.
Come with me, gentlemen. Come to my office. Come to my cork board. So the letter
looks a lot like my living room.
The letter is real and authentic. It's known. We have seen the next time on Game of Thrones. It's a real and authentic letter.
Before all that, I was thinking that,
now that we know the letter has been authenticated, what does Littlefinger want? Littlefinger wants Sansa. That's all he wants. You know what is going to bring Sansa away from him? Arya Stark. Littlefinger wants Arya Stark dead. That is a fact. Now, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, if you will turn your attention here to Sansa Stark. Sansa Stark does not trust Arya, but you know what? She still loves her, and that's important. Sansa loves her sister, and she also, for a fact, does not trust one Peter Baelish. Peter Baelish rides everywhere on a damn spider. You can't trust the man. She knows that.
Objection!
Know that. Oh, overruled!
I don't really have an objection. I just wanted to say it. It sounded so Professor Layton.
It was really good. I liked it a lot. Now, Sansa knows she cannot trust Peter Baelish. So as soon as Baelish brings up Brienne is obligated to intercede if there's an attempt on one of their lives, she immediately knows what Littlefinger's play is. She knows that Littlefinger is trying to get Arya into a position where Arya will make an attempt on Sansa's life, thereby forcing Brienne to kill Arya. So that's why she sends Brienne away. She wants Brienne gone because she feels in her heart that she can defuse the situation. Okay. She's like, I'm smart enough. I'm guileful enough. Arya's kind of a dummy. I can get through to her. I know she's mad. I can make her see reason, though. I'm smart enough. I got to figure out where she's at, and that's why, hence the spying. She goes to spy on Arya because she's like, okay, if I can figure out where Arya's at, I can get through to her. And that's why she sends Brienne away.
Yep, that's better.
If that is the case, that actually makes sense to Sansa's character a lot more than what I was assuming was happening.
I rest my case, Your Honor.
I think that's a good case. Yeah. I wish the scene had demonstrated that a little more clearly, but yes, I think you're dead on. I really do. That was well articulated, Dalton. I appreciate the.
And that would also make some more sense with like Sansa's like she's a little bit frustrated while she's sending Brienne away. She's kind of she doesn't want her to be away, but it's for the the better good.
Because as soon as Brienne starts to argue with her, she's like, "Get out of here! Go! Just shush! Go! Listen!
I know what I'm doing." Yeah. We understand Baelish's point of view, and I think kind of understanding where Sansa's coming from really makes it.
This leads us to something I know you hate.
Yeah, this is the next scene.
And I actually like this scene.
Okay, cool. So the next scene, of course, we're talking about is where Sansa goes snooping through Arya's things, which, again, I think points to what you're saying, because she's trying to figure out what can I find to learn about Arya so that I can talk with her or make a connection or maybe use something against her. I don't know about that. But, again, she's trying to learn more about Arya, and that's when Arya, of course, sneaks in and goes full crazy serial killer mode, kind of talking about how she stole the faces from the Hall of Faces and she could put them on, and then is trying to intimidate Sansa, but also at the end, intimidating, but also gives her the dagger, which implies that, to me at least implies, but we're sisters and I still trust you to know what the right thing to do is. That's kind of was my take from it.
So
what did you hate about it then?
It just felt really weird. Collectively, and maybe it's going for it. It felt uncomfortable. It felt a little too direct, honestly. And this is one of those things that felt like everything was moving so fast. The whole scene feels like it's just a lot of things that I wish had more time to breathe were truncated. It's like we jumped ahead.
So there's pretty much kind of the same issues. We've all kind of had with things.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, it feels like we skipped about 3 or 4 scenes in between here and there. But I mean, it doesn't make it terrible. I'm just saying it's. I like it less than the first one because the first one I felt like I got the human element of both of them, and this scene if I walk away feeling like Sansa should definitely be terrified of Arya, even though I know Arya gestures trust, it's still kind of creepy and terrifying, and I'm not sure I understand why Arya is there either. So I don't know. What did you like about it though?
Well, for me, the thing that works really well about it, and I'm curious, it's interesting to know where you're at. It's interesting. I'm curious to find out where Daniel's at, but because I feel like Daniel and I are more in line on this episode than in previous times that I've been on the show. I feel like Daniel and I have usually been kind of at odds with each other on episodes. I feel like Daniel likes a lot of the episodes that I don't like and vice versa. And I'm just kind of, this episode I'm realizing me and Daniel seem to be on the same page, whereas you and Austin didn't like it quite as much as we did. The thing that I like about this, and it comes out of what we were talking about earlier, right? With Arya saying, I can imagine a lot, dude. All right, sure. I bet it was hard. Arya gets to the crux of what the real issue is Arya has realized that she maybe kind of does want to be like Sansa, and it's frustrating for her. She spent all this time becoming a murder kill bot, and she sees the value of politicking. She sees that there is something interesting about that. She sees that there is something that she's just not good at, and it's kind of frustrating. And I think that's why we get these lines like, I could be you if I wanted to. I could cut your face off and I could be you. I could see what it was like to be you for a day.
Right.
It's this kind of like this concession of, I bet I could do what you do, but I recognize that I can't, and I trust you as my sister, so even though I'm a goddamn maniac, I'm going to go ahead and put you in the driver's seat because I trust you more than I trust anybody else.
Do you think she realizes kind of how much of a maniac she is?
No, I think it's purely subconscious.
Okay.
No, absolutely not.
Okay.
I don't think she realizes how far gone she is.
Okay.
And I think there might be a reckoning of that before the show's over. I don't think she knows how far gone she is. What she does know is that it makes sense to put Sansa in the driver's seat even if she's not sure what's going on.
Right.
And I think Arya's expressing her frustration at not being good at this kind of fighting.
Right.
Yeah, to piggyback off that, I also really, really enjoyed the scene a lot. I like this tension between Sansa and Arya, and as we kind of talked about already, it makes a lot of sense, as they have never been that close. They've always kind of been at odds with each other, wanting very different things out of life. And I like a lot of the points that Dalton was making. One thing that I really liked about this scene I kind of realized is how kind of crazy Arya really is. I mean, I'd like to point out that she says to Sansa that Arya says to Sansa that she would rather die before working for a Lannister, but she herself, if you guys remember, worked for not just the Lannisters, but like for Tywin himself and did things for him. So I found that really interesting. And she also says that she recalls Sansa being up there when Ned died, and that Sansa did nothing, but I remember Sansa screaming and yelling and being like held back as Sansa was screaming, "No, don't kill him, don't kill him." So Arya is recalling this information just false, and that makes her extremely dangerous.
I think one thing you're touching on, Daniel, is one thing I really, really like about the novels that the show has at times done really, really well. I just don't think it's done it in a while. But now you're bringing this up, though. It's really great because the one thing about those novels is they're all first-person perspective. So you're in their head. So you understand. And there are a lot of circumstances in the books in which characters misremember things. And I think this is a sequence where it shows that Arya is very fallible, because we all know, because we saw the big picture, we know that she's wrong. That was not the case. Sansa was screaming and crying, and of course we know what she went after later. Arya is projecting what the image she's always had of her sister onto her memories, which are obviously incorrect, which makes her very, very, very dangerous, because that means when she makes a judgment call, that is the be-all, end-all. There's no... I mean, there's not a lot of logic that goes into that outside of her own logic,
and
right?
I think there's some she's projecting some of what she's feeling towards herself on Sansa, right?
Yeah.
Because Arya's like, oh, I'm a killer now, but it doesn't matter. Like, everybody fixed everything while I was gone for the most part. I'm not even being useful with all these murder skills I got now, because
so
most of my hit list got taken out without me.
Right.
And I think that's pretty much spot on. Is Arya wants to be respected. She doesn't know how to express that because she's like emotionally stunted at this point. But all she really wants is to be a part of things, I think. And she's trying to show Sansa, like, I am a force to be reckoned with. I can be useful. I can do things. And I'm an important part of this family. She honestly reminds me a bit of Fredo from The Godfathers. Like, I'm smart. I can do things. All the while trying to kill her brother or his brother. So I think she just really wants respect as part of the Stark family.
It's interesting to see that. What is she doing now that she's being put back in what used to be her home, her natural habitat, and to show how far removed she is from other humans.
Yeah, and to kind of, again, I was right. I'm glad me and Austin are on the same page with this episode. To kind of put a pin in it, I think the reason I like this scene so much is it makes this conflict that they've been sowing the seeds for like the last 3 episodes that I haven't really understood. It makes it make more sense to me. It does reframe the narrative of they do seem to be doubling down on reminding you that Arya is kind of broken, and I think what this scene does a good job of showing that I had kind of forgotten about, honestly, is Arya had to fully strip her ego, right? She had to fully destroy her own ego so she could become no one and use the masks. She had to do that. That's the rules of using those masks. Right. And then she decided, you know what? I don't want to do this. She's trying to rebuild who she is, and she's probably not very far along on that because she hasn't talked to somebody who she didn't have to worry about killing her since she left Bravos.
Right.
I mean, it took her, and that's, again, we got that scene with the Lannisters at the campfire to kind of start that. There are people you can trust. And I think the show could have done a better job throughout this last couple of episodes. It could have done better by Arya to make it more clear that she was trying to rebuild her personality after completely pulling it apart. But I like where this episode leaves us with her. It does leave us with the sense that she is trying to rebuild her own ego.
Yeah. That's a really good point, Dalton. Well, we have talked a lot about this. I'm glad this has been a really good conversation, but let us go back to Beyond the Wall for kind of our final stretch of storyline here. Thoros of Myr died, and I think he got me some points for freezing to death. I don't know. That's apparently the easiest way to go, is what the Hound says. And
yeah, he did. He got you a memorable death 50-point bonus there. Also, #cheating.
Okay, I'm not gonna make shit about the flaming sword being magic, but I don't know, memorable death, freeze.
Yeah,
you know,
that's a death off screen.
It was the zombie polar bear. They said that was cause of death.
He did
not the freeze.
Get mauled by a polar bear, so I'll give him that. So I mean, I was sad because I do like the Brotherhood without banners, but you know, he was expected. Him and Barrack, I thought, were both surefire goners. Barrack sees the Night King and he says, "We gotta watch out for this guy with his flaming sword." And then that's when the Hound, throws some shit about, the only lord I ever knew was, whatever. Again, some philosophical shit they're floating around.
You're fighting just bringing up the coolest part. So, yeah, I can feel it. I can feel it in you rising.
So this is when the Hound apparently gets very dumb when he's bored, which is reasonable. He's like, oh, yeah, I'm going to throw rocks to zombies.
Hey, guys, this episode.
Oh, my goodness.
It's an embarrassment of riches.
But it was kind of funny, though. It was kind of hilarious.
So funny.
He throws the rock, knocks his head off, and then he throws the second rock, and it lands right at their feet, and they're like, shit.
It might actually be in an episode full of really great the Hound jokes. It might be the joke of the episode.
Oh, yeah. No, I'd give it that. That was hilarious.
Praise the Lord of Light for the Hound.
And to be fair, it's totally believable, too, that, after being out there for so long, someone would just get bored and start, throwing rocks. I could, and forgetting, the seriousness of what's really going on. That's totally believable, too. So,
worst case scenario, they kill him. They're surrounded by the army of the dead. They're gonna die. They've already resigned to themselves to the fact that they're probably going to die. So, what's it got to lose? Throw some rocks, have some fun.
And then them zombies just start piling in. Thank God Gandalf had those eagles, though. Thank God. Thank God he flew in. In fact, I'm pretty sure... Oh, I'm sorry. Daenerys had the dragons. And in fact, I'm pretty sure I was kind of wondering... The way they brought her in, again, this is all in the fun, so I'm not being too harsh on it, but, they came in and they waited until they were absolutely fucked to show up. I was like, I'm sure she was waiting up. She's, watching from above, oh, they're good. They're good. Oh, wait. The red shirts are still alive. I'll wait for another... Okay, now let's make an entrance. But it was really cool. It was really freaking cool seeing the dragon fly and light those dudes on fire, melting the water. Oh, my God. That was incredible.
What a treasure. What a joy. I will state for the record that the fastest bird on Earth is the peregrine falcon, with a horizontal flight speed of about 58 miles per hour, a diving speed on average of 200 miles per hour, with a maximum flight speed of about 250 miles an hour. That's a damn falcon. These dragons are the size of Boeing 747s. They have a wingspan of at least 50 feet.
They probably go Mach 5 or something, right?
I 100% believe they could do Mach 1.
Listen, if Jon Snow's boat can make the Kessel Run in 12 parsecs, I have no doubt that the dragons can make it. And
the force of a dragon taking off knocked down literally 1,000 whites.
Is it African or European?
The dragon?
Yes.
It's very important. It's Essoian. I don't know the demonium for something from Essos.
we don't quite know. No, okay. And actually, the dragons flying. That's actually the thing that I think is fine. That's the part of that whole equation. I'm like, yeah, well, the dragons they fly. They're huge. They can fly fast. Yeah, that's totally cool. So it's the timing of when they show up is the hilarious part. But
it's not Gendry. It's not the dragon. It's not the raven. It's all three of them together.
Yes, correct.
Is it a little eye rolly that they show up at just the right moment, which we knew was probably going to happen? Yeah, it is. But let's not pretend like. Yeah, well, let's not pretend like this hasn't happened, because so we've had prior seasons with Dany in the arena, the dragon swoops in and saves her, even all the way back to Blackwater when the Tyrells and Tywin show up and save everybody. This stuff has happened before. This one, the reason this feels kind of contrived, I guess, is because it's so fast. Everything is rushed for sure. It's not the actual event; it's the lead up to the event.
Right. Okay. So, and again, I'm not going to spend too long belaboring the point. Cause I think Dalton's right. It's kind of an it's a snowball. It's it's all three of those things.
It's not any one thing.
But the reason Blackwater, for instance, I'd make a defense of that is because we actually knew Tywin was MIA from the show for 3 or 4 episodes. We didn't know where he was at. We saw him leaving Harrenhal, and that was the last time we saw him. So when they show up, you're like, oh, that was where they were the whole time. It was convenient timing, but that again, that setup felt like it checked out. And this, because of the expediting of the plot, you're like, man, that just happened so crazy fast, and the timing was so convenient. It's kind of more or less kind of showing the strings of the people behind the curtain, the things that have been there the whole time, showing them the what would you call it? Kind of like the threads of the threads, the mechanics of the story are kind of starting to.
Well, we've been watching. Not only have people been thinking about this universe for 20 years,
right?
A Game of Thrones was published in 1996.
Yes.
And we've been watching this show for the better part of 10 years now. I'm a much older man than I was when this show started. We have had a long time to think about the meta-narrative of this show. We've had a long time to think about how these pieces fit together, and I think that is part of why this show has gotten, for want of a better way to put it, predictable, because we know how Game of Thrones works now. We understand how these pieces fit together. So I think you've had 20 years to, well, obviously these dragons are going to be the ace in the hole, and that's where the end of this episode is really great, because we've always assumed the dragons would be the ace in the hole in the war to end all wars, and we realize, oh, well, nothing works out the way you want it to.
Right. Yeah. And this is a cool scene. And that's the thing. It is still really cool when they show up. And that is when we did get to see the White Walker pull out the spear. And here, I will say the little twist for me is I thought he was going to knock on Drogon, the dragon they were all sitting on. And I was like, shit, I don't know what's going to happen then.
Yeah, the one sitting still, that's really easy target. No, I'll go for the one in the back who's moving at 200 miles an hour.
Accuracy.
He has to make it look cool.
Geez,
he's got to make
how
it look
far
cool.
did he throw that thing?
He's been training for thousands of years, like an Olympic, whatever you call those.
He's the Peyton Manning of White Walkers.
So does that make Jon Snow Tom Brady?
We don't even talk about that cheater. You would like him, you cheater.
Winning, that's what I call it. No, this was a...
No, hold on. No, Jon Snow is a man of honor and nobility. If he's anybody, he's Colin Kaepernick.
Yeah, I mean...
Jon he goes into his Wolverine rage, just killing dudes. So when he clearly has an out to hop on the dragon, they're all like, Jon, come on. He's like, no, I gotta kill some more dudes over here. Because
he's gonna end the war.
That's kind of what it felt like. He saw the Night King, and I guess it's that he thought he had a shot, was my kind of thinking.
It's the same thing Jaime did, right? When he charges at Dany the way he does. Jon had the same tunnel vision nonsense going on.
Right. Well, and it cost him a dragon because of that. Because then the dragon went down, and that's when Daenerys is like, "Shit, we gotta go," and Jon's like, "You gotta go." Again, the dragon Viserion going down. By the way, that was sad. It's
a bummer.
It was a bummer. I don't know if I'm as attached to the dragons as a lot of viewers are, but it was still sad. It was a beautiful beast.
I care more about the dragons than any single character in that whole show.
And I think
it's the truth.
I agree. I 100% agree. The dragons are the best.
I mean, they're pretty kick-ass.
But the argument could be made the only one with any real personality is Drogon, because it's the only one we've actually got to spend time with. So, if you're not really that fazed by Viserion eating it, I don't blame you. There's 3 dragons. One of them was going.
But you are a monster if you feel that way.
It feels more like the Night King just got a pawn to the end of the board or something. Took a queen and then got a queen, in a chess game. And you're like, so from a plot perspective, I'm like, oh, that's really cool. But like the emotional connection, and again, I like it. And I was like, oh, that's so sad. The way it went down, like a plane, it was like fire flying out of its. I mean, it was pretty sad. But it wasn't
Guys,
like
Caleb's never owned a pet. This is the real problem.
I just got rid of 2 cats, you motherfucker.
I think that it is super sad, and I think this completely changes the stakes of what's really going on. Now you have to be very cautious when going anywhere with the dragons. If you're going to the fight the White Walkers. Before, as we sort of already mentioned, it was sort of the ace in the hole. You're going to go up, they're going to burn them all, and then they're going to win. Now it's not so easy. You have to be extremely careful with the way you're using that, or they will have 2 dragons and you'll have 1. So I love that this is the way that it ends, because it completely changes the way that they are going to approach this situation moving forward.
Yeah, and the White Walker's going to move at a much faster speed now than they have been.
Oh yeah, and it took all that long just to get all the way from Hardhome.
We
down
know
on
from this
Eastwatch.
episode that the Night King should be in King's Landing in like a couple hours.
Yeah,
tops.
2 hours max. Now wouldn't it be badass if they have that big meeting and then Night King flew in on his dragon? Oh shit!
Here's the thing I really like about this, because going into this episode, I actually, when Becca and I went to start this episode, I mentioned to her, one of the things I really like about this season is I can't tell which conflict is going to get resolved first. I legitimately don't know between, this one episode and 6 episodes remaining next year. I legitimately can't figure out if the battle for the Iron Throne or the war to end all wars will be resolved first. And I'm excited to see, and putting that dragon on the other side of the board completely does that same thing. They've got the Queen's Moot coming up next week, but also, Austin was kind of joking, but he's not wrong. Like, the Night King could be on Viserion by tomorrow.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, guess what? If that thing shoots blue flame instead of ice, I know there's some debate about that. That wall's fucking gone.
Oh, yeah.
That's it. All the White Walkers get to go across the wall because all the magic's gone.
Right.
It totally changes
the game.
The possibilities of what can happen next on Game of Thrones, I think, is really exciting.
So I've got 2 things to say. Firstly, to kind of jump off of what you're saying, as much as I really hated how they set up, how last week they kind of repieced everything very, very quickly in a lot of ways that I didn't appreciate, I will say it did change my perception of where the season was going pretty quickly, actually, because I thought we were going to have dealt with the Iron Throne stuff mostly this season, and then we're going to look to the war to end all wars with the White Walkers next season. But
the Iron Throne doesn't matter if everybody's dead, though. They don't even have to address that storyline anymore. Just kill everyone.
Well, my fear was it was like it was going to get like hyper conventional. We were going to do all that stuff, and then the last season is just going to be nothing but a big war between dragons and White Walkers, and that sounds cool, and but it's not Game of Thrones.
Yeah, exactly. This episode complicates the narrative in a really interesting ways.
Yeah,
and I that's why I was confused by you not liking it, but the more we've talked about it tonight, I've realized that a lot of the issues you have with it. Whereas, I have issues with it kind of intellectually, but I still think it works overall.
Sure.
I started to understand why you struggle with this episode a little bit more. You hate a lot of what it does, but you like where it leads.
Like where it's going to is not the problem as much as how it's getting there.
I 100% get what you're saying.
Now, the other thing about this is it shows Dany that she is not invincible, which is a big one for her because she's been just walking around with her dragons like she's untouchable.
There's a really great moment that I want to talk about when we get to the next scene.
Here's my other Here's a legitimate fucing problem I have here.
Okay.
And this one's fair. This one I will concede to you.
This is bullshit. Okay, listen. Benjen Ex Machina is still Deus Ex Machina. I don't care how you spin it. I know Benjen. He's a magical being. I get it. I'll buy it. You know what? I was thinking back. He did the same thing when he showed up last season, and I didn't criticize it then, so I'm going to be consistent. Okay, he shows up out of nowhere. It's not as much as it. I do think it's lazy. Him just showing up. I'm like, you know what? Okay, that's fine. He comes out of nowhere. Okay, but he does. He shows up, hops off the horse, puts Jon on, and says, and like, there's just long enough for them to make eye contact. When he's like, oh, Uncle Benjen, and you're like, you gotta go. But Uncle Benjen, there's room on this horse. You could come too. No. There's not enough time. There's no time.
Benjen wants to die. He's a zombie.
But that hasn't been made clear. Here's the thing. We have no context for how he feels about anything.
That's totally fair.
That's my problem. Like,
That's
if
fair.
If it had been set up like at any point he'd shown up that he was like ready to die. And I guess he kind of alluded to the fact last time we saw him.
He does when he talks with Bran a little bit.
Austin,
you
beat
could
me
have
to it, yeah.
At some point in this season, they should have brought Benjen up, just like in passing or something, to like give you a hint that something like this could happen. I will concede that this is definitely textbook Deus Ex Machina, and it is. We knew he was North. We talked about it in the show a little bit, but it should have been hinted at some point.
An establishing scene, even if we don't see, like as you said, even if we do not see him, someone somewhere, Bran tells someone about Uncle Benjen North, anything.
Even Bran just mentioning, I saw Uncle Benjen. That's it. That's all you needed.
Just so we can set in the minds that that's a possibility. And I would have liked for him to have done more than just shown up. Don't even bother giving us that moment where they recognize each other, because at this point it's not worth it. It doesn't really amount to anything. Because in the early seasons, that was Jon. It was a big mystery. He was like, "I'm looking for Uncle Benjen. Where's my Uncle Benjen?" Outside of being a mystery for us, the viewer, like that was something that really was like at the core of Jon. He wanted to know where his uncle he looked up to so much was, and like this is what we got, and it just feels ultra rushed, ultra sloppy, and anyway,
totally fair. I feel like for me, as Austin mentioned, it got brought up with Bran that like. I can't go be with you guys anymore, but I've got work to do here still. Like that, like sense of duty, and like I've got one more job to do, and then I can die. I think those seeds were laid. I don't feel like it's a Deus Ex Machina. However, I will go ahead and concede that being reminded that piece is on the board one more time between him dropping Bran off at the wall and him saving Jon. Yeah, it would have worked a little bit better if we were reminded the piece was on the board. I feel like the strength of it, though, is that we had been allowed to forget he wasn't on the board. It just might have been a little too long.
Right. And again, that combined with and I understand the urgency of the situation, but it's like it just talking about things that pay off very well in the season. A lot of those character interactions have paid off very, very well. This was not one of those,
and that's totally fair. Yeah, I like what it does for Benjen as a character, but I will agree that it's kind of sloppily executed.
Guys, it wasn't the hand of God. It was the hand of cold. Get it? Because he's cold hands.
Oh, snap! I'm sure Benioff and Weiss said the same thing. The writers even chuckled about it.
There we go. We finally got it. Benjen Ex Machina doesn't work. It's Cold Ex Machina.
Cold Ex Cold hand. Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and take that to that next scene then. Dany and Jon, they're on the boat. Some of this works for me. Some of it's kind of cool. We see Dany sees the wounds. I'm like, okay, sure. That's cool. I was wondering how that was going to pay off somehow. But then we have the scene where basically Jon's like, "I'm so sorry about your drag. I'll bend the knee anytime. I'll make out with you. We'll fuck anytime. I'll bend the knee anytime. Right now. You just do it. Let's go for it."
He learned how to keep warm. Okay, that's what he did. Tormund told him, best is fucking. He's like, well, here I am. I'm freezing to death. Let's go.
I mean, yeah, he does all but propose to her. I'm going to go ahead and say you both grossed me out a little bit just now. But you're both gross. But you're not wrong. I mean, he does... Wow. God damn. Benioff and Weiss and Martin, by extension, have really gone ahead and put this incestuous relationship on the table. And that's how I know that the show is going to do something interesting with this. Because...
one of them has to die.
The thing that I think they're doing very well, that... They are having these scenes between them be kind of charged with chemistry. And I think it is supposed to be gross. I think that's kind of the point. I think that's why they keep reminding the audience that because they won't stop bringing it up. They will not stop bringing up that Jon
If they wanted it to be gross, they shouldn't have made them both so attractive.
I think you're right. I think you're absolutely right. And I think that is Martin, as a storyteller, knowing what people expect from stories. And I think that's Benioff and Weiss, like, knowing what to do with their cast. I think it's good storytelling. I think they are intentionally trying to gross the audience out. The problem is people are dumb, and people want to see attractive people smush faces.
Yes.
And yeah, of course we do. Watching pretty people make out is one of our most time-honored traditions as a species. So it is one of, as with many decisions throughout the season, it is a thing that narratively and thematically is consistent and interesting, but in execution kind of falls short.
Yeah, it just it doesn't feel like it's been earned yet. Again, it's just a lack of time. That's all it is. It's all it is has been a lack of time. The scenes they've had together, I would argue, have been good scenes, but it's just that the romantic establishment has been pushed so fast that I'm not.
It has.
Like that's the thing. I feel like the scenes have been quality. All of them have been, between both Kit Harington and Emilia Clarke. I think the writing has been pretty good for those scenes. Mostly, it's just the rate at which they're just going for it is just a little much.
Well, and that's what makes John's relationship to Ygritte and her death so tragic. Is it took like 3 seasons to get through that arc. You were deeply invested in it. When they inevitably make something tragic happen to John and Dany, regardless of what it is, when inevitably something tragic happens, it's going to be kind of frustrating because we haven't had that much time to figure out how we feel about this relationship, whether or not we're grossed out by it. I'm really hoping for some real Oedipus Rex type shit where one of them is given the option to not learn secret knowledge and chooses to anyway, and then it ruins their lives.
Ooh, that'd be twisted.
That really is where I think this might be going.
I mean, Sam has the keys to do this for everyone.
I do hope it is something a little bit subversive like that because I certainly don't want them to end up together because I think it's dumb and I think it's weird. And
it's both weird. It's both weird and dumb and conventional.
Yeah, too conventional. Yeah. So and if it does wind up where they are together for some reason, there's got to be a twist or something in there.
And again, that might be the twist that it is super gross.
It would be really conventional because having sex with relatives is so season 1.
Oh gosh.
Bullseye, Lucari.
So I already got my Ace Hardware joke in for the episode, so I'm not gonna beat a dead horse. But yeah.
What? For the record, how come I didn't get magic points for him conjuring chains? Just saying.
He found him. He had to go buy him from Ace Hardware. He had to travel the distance. That's not magic, Austin.
Nope, bag of holding.
That's capital. That's capitalism, Austin. That's business.
I am going to go ahead and assume that the White Walkers have no currency. just going to throw
Scalps?
that out there.
I don't know.
I think they're a hive mind. Like bees or ants.
Like the Zerg? I don't know. All right. If you say so. Anything else you guys would like to add about the episode named after our podcast? Again, I want to say special thanks to HBO. You guys love our podcast so much that you named us the episode Beyond the Wall. I mean, we've been around for 4 years, so this is not, I mean, it's not like we're the new kid in town and we stole their name. We've been around, so.
I look forward to naming this episode Beyond the Wall - Beyond the Wall. It's going to be great.
Oh, yeah. It's going to look pretty in those. It's going to be great for SEO, let me tell you.
It's going to look great in that podcast feed.
Oh, yes. So, yes, the very self-indulgent, like it's no one's business. So, yeah, anything else you guys would like to add about the episode?
No, I'm good. We talked about the dragon because it made more sense to talk about the dragon before we talked about that weird incest.
Before the weird incest. Dragons before incest, that's what I always say.
Always.
We're going to go ahead and wrap the show, but before we do, I want to remind you where you can find us all online. Dalton Stewart, guest host, 4th season in a row. Thank you for coming back again this year.
It's such an honor. I love coming and talking to you guys about Game of Thrones. It's such a joy. It would have felt weird, like the closer we got to the end of the season, I was like, shit, am I gonna have time to be on this year? Because
it's so short.
I miss these sweet boys.
Yeah, no, and we miss you too. I always love what you bring to the table. Me and you go way back doing podcast analysis, and I do miss hearing the sound of your voice, hyper analyzing everything in a way that I really appreciate, and I think our listeners appreciate as well. And hey, we got 1 season left. It's 6 seasons, but you've always got a spot at the podcast.
Thank you. If you know, in the interim, I'll still be around over
on the
next
internet.
12
Yes,
months.
where can people find you on the internet?
You can always find me on Twitter at Doll_Stew, which is where I'm not much fun to follow these days. Let's be honest.
It's been a tough year and a half, 2 years.
I'm kind of a bummer to follow these days, but I do my best to find interesting things from interesting people and share those, and that's the joy. Retweeting good content has been my real joy online.
You tweet out a lot of really great think pieces about film.
Oh, thank you. I try to share the love about film and also about underrepresented people that like.
Yes.
When I learn something that I didn't know, I get really excited and I like to share that. So I'm not fun on Twitter. I am a lot of fun still. I like to think on the Good Trash Genre Cast.
Oh.
As you're listening to this in your ears right now, you can also go listen to me and Dustin Sells and our co-founder of the Good Trash Genre Cast having a guest appearance. Talk about Crimson Tide starring Gene Hackman and Denzel Washington. That'll come out Wednesday of this week. So the same day. You're hearing this.
So if you're listening to this podcast and you want to hear Dalton talk about Crimson Tide, you actually can access it immediately.
Yeah,
that podcast.
We have a good time talking about it. So
cool.
Yeah, that's what I got going on these days. And again, much like this beautiful podcast, you can find that at goodtrashmedia.com.
Excellent. All right, Austin Lucari, where can people keep up with you online this week?
You can find me on Twitter. My Twitter account is aclucari. I'm usually on there talking shit about the fantasy league and bragging about how I'm in the lead this week. I'm going to win.
Wait, you're not talking shit. You're every week, Austin. You're bragging. How is that taking a shit on? Whatever. All right. Yes, Austin is tweeting about his victory and the War of the Three Kings these days. Daniel Stahl, where can people find you online?
You can find me at Daniel Stahl 23 on Twitter, and yeah, shoot me a tweet. I'd love to chat and talk to you guys.
All right, and as always, you can find me on Twitter at CMastersTalk. That's letter C, Masters Talk. Tweeting about Game of Thrones right now. Lots of Game of Thrones, of course. Once it wraps up, I'll always be tweeting about a lot of film reviews. Sometimes I retweet Dalton's think pieces. I tweet about the film things I like, my little reviews. I also tweet about video games quite a bit whenever I get around to doing the gaming that I love so much. And then, of course, you can also find me, my entire online body of work at calebmasters.net. And if you are into the film analysis piece, you can head on over to the cinematropolis.com. We have a lot of written and video essays doing a very similar type of analysis there. If you're really wanting to dig into the weeds and look like more essay, more academia inspired film content, you can head over there and find us. That's the cinematropolis.com. All right, without further ado, let's go ahead and talk about next week's episode.
There is only one war that matters, and it is here.
Surprise! Once again, HBO still hasn't posted the title of the episode, so I can't really tell you what we're prehashing, and there's not a description to prehash, so there's no episode title, there's no description, all we've got is that little promo. I don't really... We've been doing polls, so let's go ahead and stick to doing polls. This week's poll: will there be a Clegane Bowl in the Season 7 finale? Yes, no, or what's a Clegane Bowl? And no, it is not a bowl you can get at Chipotle.
Oh God, if only.
Can they do a special for that?
Yeah, that'd be a fun media crossover.
They need to do that.
You know what? I'll take that back. Burrito bowls often too often look like a bowl of gore, so let's maybe not do that.
Ooh, yeah,
that's gross.
Especially when you get the hot sauce.
I'm gonna feign ignorance and pretend I don't know what a Clegane Bowl is, so the audience can know. Although if you listen to this and don't know, I'd be surprised. Yeah, it's for many years now we've theorized that the Hound and Sir Strong, I believe, is
Sir Barristan Strong.
Sir Barristan Strong in large fat quotes, and they kind of dropped that pretense.
Yeah, they did it. They did it for like season 5, and after that, they're like, let's just
like, no, that's stupid. Yeah, everybody knows. So yeah, Hound v Mountain. They're gonna go mano a mano finally after 7 years of the Hound flooding that hatred, finally unchaining it and admitting to himself he hates his dogshit brother. I'm thinking probably.
I think odds are pretty good. Austin, any thoughts? This is the one you've been rooting for years.
I think there will be conflict, but I don't think it's going to be what everyone thinks it is. I think the Hound mercifully puts down his brother. I think he puts him out of his like misery, basically.
Okay, one question.
That would be really beautiful, actually.
That would
actually be really touching.
That would be, and that'd be great Game of Thrones, because we've seen him kind of regret his sins. You know, like
I'm gonna tell you right now, if that happens, the Hound is not long for this world, because that will mean his character arc is complete.
Done. Yes, that's true.
If he has like a truly compassionate act towards his brother the zombie, brother the zombie.
Yeah.
God, I would watch that show. Yeah, I think his character arc's done.
Yeah. So maybe they fight, puts his brother down, and he dies next episode.
Yeah. No? Wow, Austin, way to reframe that in a way I hadn't thought about.
Yeah, that's a good bit. Daniel, any thoughts on Clegane Bowl?
I tend to think I don't think it's going to happen. I feel like I don't know. I thought last season we got a little bit closer. Yeah, they'll be in the same place, but I don't think they're actually going to have a fight. No.
They can't not take the bait, man. It's there. They got to take it.
They've been taking the fan fiction bait all season, so that's why I'm saying I'm not sure they won't take it. At least
Caleb, I have a question for you.
Oh, sure.
Do we know? I figure this is a thing you might know. Is this going to be a supersized episode again next week?
82 minutes.
Okay, so this will be right. Oh God, it'll be longer than
it's
this. Week's
almost
episode.
yes, it'll be longer than this episode. It is almost a feature-length film. In fact, you could argue it's a feature-length film.
Wow,
you
that'll be
could.
fun.
I mean,
Yeah,
obviously-
80 minutes is right at. So wow, fun.
Yeah.
That's a lot of Euron time, guys.
Oh God. Yeah, you're in time. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode of our discussion of Game of Thrones Season 7, Episode 6, Beyond the Wall. Make sure to join us next week when we continue our conversation going beyond the wall in the Season 7 finale. And until next time.
That a 16-year-old murder clown or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, she's crazy. She kills
she's
people.
a whirling dervish of nightmares and terror.
Murder clown.
Yeah,
There
I
you
don't know
go.
why those were the word I went with.
Juggling swords and throwing them at Lannisters.
Exactly.
Yeah.